Earlier today in Israel, there was, or rather, I should say, in Samaria, there was a basically a terrorist attack on Highway 55 between Karnei, Shomrom, and Kedumim. Three people were murdered, and today we're gonna just discuss a little bit about what happened. As last time I checked, we haven't the terrorists basically were able to escape the scene, and we haven't found them unless something changed in the last hour. Okay, so we still haven't found them, although my understanding is the IDF actually knows two of those people, or basically had knew about them before and knew they were engaged in these sort of acts. So welcome to the reality show. Joining me today is Marco, Richard, and Alex. And I'll jump to Alex immediately because she's the one that messaged me in the morning about this. Um, Alex, yeah, just your first thoughts about what happened.
Yeah, I mean, I actually drive through this on this road three or four times a week, and I've used it many times in the past. And it's a kind of two-lane road, but it's a road which actually cuts through a village called El Funduk. And that village, has been the scene of a lot of various attacks over the years. And, you know, I used to shop in the village, right? 15 years ago, I would say I would have gone there and gone into the stores, which I think a lot of Israelis would still be happy to do, but it became, you know, a hotbed of terrorism and you're supporting your enemy. So these three victims, two elderly ladies, and there's another guy I did hear he is also fighting for his life. Were part of, a list of around a dozen people who were shot. Um, and so there was some shots that have been fired, basically onto a bus, and also the man was actually an off-duty police officer who managed to fire some, I think about two or three shots at the terrorists as they were escaping. And he was killed in front of his 8-year-old son. So, I mean, just enormously sad. And there's a lot of different reactions to it about how we're actually going to kind of get over, right, this brand of, Palestinian terrorism, making all kinds of suggestions. Let's build another overpass. Let's make it so we can go around the village. It's like, it, okay, that we know that this doesn't work. Building overpasses doesn't work. You have to deal with the cause of the problem, which is the Palestinian people.
Yeah, I have a few sort of comments from the politicians. We can go to that later. But oftentimes when it comes to people claiming that Israel is an apartheid, they use the argument, well, there are like separate roads for Jews and for Arabs, and I don't know to what extent that's true in which parts, but yeah, this is what happens when they have like roads together. It's like you take a wrong turn, you end up well, this is not specifically. I was thinking of the Ramallah lynching when the two IDF soldiers literally took a wrong turn and basically paid with their life for it. But yeah, you just go through a Palestinian village, and this is what happens. If a bus goes through a village, you just there's like a terrorist act, just like in a light of day, just like that. I think we have a few recordings. I don't want to play them today, but it's basically, they just stop by the side of the road. They see a bus, they shoot at the bus, and when as you mentioned with the police officers, when someone started shooting back, and thankfully someone was there, to at least return fire because they started escaping after that. But again, imagine, and I believe while they were escaping, there was another, I
Hmm.
believe, a civilian that actually shot at them while they were escaping. I believe he hit the car, but at least we don't need. I believe the terrorists were not shot. At least we don't know about that. But yeah, I mean, Marco, what do you think? How can you really have like people talk about the two-state solution, people talk about the one-state solution, but how can you have like realistically like either when you have like a population that's that when you have like daily terrorist attacks?
Well, yeah, the daily terrorist attacks. I mean, most of the time, the Western media do not report about these kind of attacks because most of the people dead are Jews, so they don't really care much. And all these things are often always perpetrated by either by people with guns shooting randomly at buses or cars, or by ramming incident. I think yesterday or today there was another ramming. Towards a security point against soldiers that the Palestinians do as a routine. We've even seen interviews of little children saying, when I grow up, I want to drive a car so I can drive into a group of Israelis. So they really do what their culture tells them to do. They behave as they're expected to behave, i.e., by being the usual genocidal maniacs who are going after Israel in any way that they can. And Alex mentioned, I mean, this is a main road that goes from the middle of the West Bank west towards Tel Aviv. So it's not a road for Jews, it's a road used by everybody in the area. So these people, again, show how little regard for life they have. They don't care whether they're killing Palestinian Jews or anyone else, whether they're innocent or guilty. These people are hell bent into creating havoc and destruction because that's all they know. That's all they can do.
Yeah, and to pick up on what Alex said earlier about building another pass or something like that, this kind of is how the same attitude is treated to terrorism within the West, isn't it? It's a, why don't we put bollards here on this bridge to protect people in this instance, or in this Xmas market or whatever, and that is just avoiding the nature of the issue, isn't it? And I think Rand spoke about the need to you can't deal with particular problems by focusing just on those particular problems. You've got to look at the principles, you've got to look at a full philosophy in order to understand how to deal with specific issues. Otherwise, you're treating each one as you build a bridge here, you put bollards there, and you're missing utterly the point. You're missing the cause of the terrorism in the first place. And next to the actual cause of the terrorism is, of course, how people as innocent people respond to terrorism as well, because that can be a part of the success, to put it in inverted commas, of terrorism itself, because people can end up terrorizing themselves and creating more terror in their own minds than exists, and therefore changing their own lives unnecessarily. Now, that's different to what Alex was talking about in terms of funding the people who are causing the terror, because that's very, very definitely exactly what you should make sure you're not doing. Make sure that you're aware that where your money's going, that it's not ending up in the hands of those who are trying to kill you. But at the same time, in a Western city, particularly, and it doesn't even need to be a city anymore, does it? It can be a small village or a small market town anywhere in Europe, for example. In those kind of places, you've got to try and go about your own life. You've got to still live your own life, although you've got to be cognizant and aware and alert to what is possible. But at the same time, you mustn't become part of your own terrorizing, because otherwise you are working again for the enemy, and neither do you want to pay the enemy nor work for them, but you want to defend the right principles which will defend us all from ultimately more people taking this path, and that is ultimately education and proper rational thinking.
Yeah, we have Bonnie in the well. First, thank you, Kathleen, for your super chat. She is asking, Alex, do you go around armed? I'd want to.
Yes, very much. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I believe in Israel the laws when it comes to carrying firearms are pretty open, as in most people can, especially since pretty much most of the people were actually in the IDF. So we also, Bonnie in the chat is asking, why can Judea and Samaria be considered part of Israel? Now, this is an interesting question. So when it comes to Judea and Samaria, basically after the Six-Day War, Israel started occupying Judea and Samaria. I don't believe they ever annexed them technically.
No.
They annexed is
Jerusalem.
So Judea and Samaria is basically the name for sort of the what other call the West Bank, but not East Jerusalem, because that was annexed. So we've had few conversations about, like, should it be called West Bank? Should it be called Judea and Samaria? My biggest problem with sort of Judea and Samaria is whenever I hear it, I never know what specifically people are referring to, because are you referring to like specifically the areas that like Israel is under full control? Are you including also the areas that like are under joint control? Are you including all of it? And depending on which one do you use, oftentimes it doesn't make much sense. Like I'm not sure if this if the Palestinian village that this happened, which area is it under?
C, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely under C. I mean, B and A, you have a big red sign saying you guys can't come in here. And if you do, the IDF is not going to come and rescue you. Warning you, saying don't come in here. And sorry, I was just going to say as well, but sorry, I was going to.
No,
once you finished.
I'll give it to you. So basically, because in the article that I've read, it referred to as Samaria, I believe, which I found interesting. So it actually did happen there, which I believe also for Israel, Judea and Samaria is the official name for the administrative region of that area. So it's again, depending on what you're specifically trying to say, neither term is bad. But just to finish on Bonnie's point, because she was asking why it cannot be considered. Well, basically, Oslo Accords happened, Palestinian Authority was established, and now Palestinian Authority is in control of, as Alex said, Area A. So basically, for all of it to be considered Israel would have to dismantle Palestinian Authority and at the very least occupy all of it as it was pre-Oslo, or annex it, which again would mean something different. But yeah, Alex.
Yeah. So I was actually also just kind of thinking, you at the very beginning you mentioned this whole kind of the roads, right? The roads that are just for Jews. Okay, so there is one road, and it is the Road 5 highway, and it's not for Jews and it's not for Arabs. It is a road that goes from Tel Aviv, or it goes from the center of the country, and it goes to Ariel without passing a barrier. So it doesn't go past any kind of, so there's no ability for you to get in, to get out. So most of the time, like if you're wanting to try to go eastwards, you will have to go through like basically a checkpoint, where and so the army kind of controls traffic in and out, right? So there is one of those roads. It's anybody can drive on the road. It's not, if you live in Ariel or you have business in Ariel, you can use the road and drive outwards, right? So I hate that kind of accusation. Wherever you go, you see that tons of Palestinian like license plates, because they have a white license plate with green writing, and you always know whatever car they have because it says something like Allahu Akbar on the back, or some kind of dedication to Hamas in Arabic or whatever. And the driving is very, it's much worse than the Israelis, which is very bad anyway. So I always hate that accusation. And in terms of like, Judea and Samaria, so it's literally, that's just referring to there's other names for it, right? There's like, Benjamin, which is the Benjamin Regional Council. It literally is just the Regional Council, which is connecting, I suppose, to the biblical names for it. And West Bank is just very much a thing that I find to be like, it's a meaningless name. West Bank of what? The Jordan River? Who cares? I mean, it's irrelevant. And so I mean, the thing is like Area C is supposed to, I mean, that's full Israeli control, right? I mean, full Israeli control. That should be as safe as anywhere else in Israel. But we understand that even, okay, even having the small area, small pockets near to places like Nablus, right, which the 55 road that this happens on, you can, drive to Nablus in about 9 minutes. Yeah, but about 9 minutes. It was really, really quite close. But so everyone in Israel is so small. But so you have these areas that, like Nablus, where you have a very small area that the Palestinians are supposed to be, self-governing, right? And the PA, they're totally indifferent to terrorism. I mean, of course, they do want to crack down because, if the terrorism is in a way that may possibly, threaten them, right? Threaten their existence as the, PA dictators as they are. But they're indifferent, right? They're indifferent as to how many Jews die. In fact, maybe worse than indifferent. They probably are supporting it. Many Palestinian police officers partake in acts of terrorism and acts of aggression. So the time for this is a problem as well. This is not a problem that cannot be fixed militarily. This is a problem that can absolutely be fixed militarily. It just takes political will. Okay, whoever is willing to deal with this and apply a degree of control will be able to solve it in a generation, right? I would say in 20 years. I mean, it will take a lot, take a while. What you need to do, first of all, is you need to be able to, don't let people name streets after terrorists. Don't let them build big, dedications to terrorists, right? Because, it's not good. I mean, I cannot do it, right? So why can they do it? Getting rid of UNRWA, right? That might be a little bit of a step. If I want to teach, let's say, if I want to teach a whole bunch of children that they need to, I don't know, worship O.J. Simpson, the police are going to, maybe not the police, but someone is going to maybe say to me, no, we're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to incite terror. Okay. So this is all stuff that is completely solvable, but a lot of people know how to say a lot of things. They appear to not really want to take this situation seriously enough to be unpopular, both at home and abroad.
Yeah, and so sort of going further. As I mentioned, just to wrap up with some of the IDF statements. It sounds like two of the gunmen were known to the defense establishment and were already wanted for involvement in terror activity, while the third one was still unidentified. And also there's basically IDF has dispatched a large number of troops as well as Israeli Air Force helicopter to search for the terrorists, but we still have nothing yet. Defense Minister Israel Katz ordered the military to use strong force against any place where the killer's tracks lead. Anyone who follows the path of Hamas in Gaza and sponsors the murder and harm of Jews will pay a heavy price. So we still don't know if there was anything official behind this, but Hamas, so no one has claimed the responsibility for the attack, but Hamas was quick to basically call this a heroic response to ongoing crimes. Now, sort of going to the Palestinian Authority's fight against terrorism and how much it's working for them. So following the attack, Police Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir called on Israel to end security cooperation with the Palestinian Authority, which has been waging a major crackdown on terrorists in Jenin in recent
Jenin.
weeks. Jenin. I mean, Marco, what do you think? Should the should we continue hoping that Palestinian Authority will handle their terrorism as they've been claiming they want to do? And yes, I mean, technically Area A is their, not technically country in the sort of standard sense, but it's their administration. It's under them. They control the police force. They control, the welfare programs, which let's call them that. They are basically under control. So how well are they doing when it comes to anti-terrorism? And do they have motivation to actually stop this?
Well, according to the people on the ground, according to the polls, they're not doing very well because clearly they're not radical enough for most of the people who live in the West Bank. Because we've seen that actually Hamas has a much higher level of favor from the citizens of the West Bank because they're clearly a bit harder on the Jews. The PA is seen as not being active enough in causing death, killing Jews. So much so that even when they were jostling in the 2008-9 for Gaza, for control of Gaza, they were hardly the good guys. I mean, they're always seen as the moderate people, but moderate according to whom? According to the Israeli, because actually the PA is as genocidal as Hamas is, despite pretending that they're not. So I mean, the PA itself comes from a bunch of terrorists themselves. So what do you expect? And the people on the ground, partly indoctrinated by UNRWA, partly indoctrinated by the kind of we know what kind of religion of peace that inspires these people. They do exactly as they are taught. They're taught to kill as many Jews as they can. They're taught to never give up. They're taught to play the victim. They're taught to tell everybody, "Oh, we're just resisting. We are victims. We are being occupied," and all this kind of stuff. And they play according to the book. And of course, nobody in those areas has got any interest at all in peace. We've seen again with the ARCUK project that we talked about it last week. See interviews in Israel and the West Bank, the attitudes are totally opposite. Israel is for peace, and that's why there are 1 million Arabs living in Israel, totally free to behave and act according to what's good for them, while the Arabs outside of Israel are still living this medieval kind of culture that dictates that they have to sacrifice themselves in order to appease the gods and continue war against the infidels. Aided partially by the moral weakness of the West, who always find an excuse, who always finds a way of supplying money and weapons and whatever they need in order to keep this fight on.
I mean, the truth is there's no Palestinian Authority of any kind or leadership of any kind at present that has any decent philosophy behind it for ensuring the peace and safety of anyone. Frankly, or ensuring the ability for people to live their lives according to the way they want to, by their individual rights. That is clearly not apparent at the moment, and that vacuum can't be filled by wishful thinking. It can't be filled by going, "Oh, well, this one haven't had a go yet. Let's give them a go in charge," or "They haven't been in the headlines lately. They're not the ones responsible for the most recent terror, so we'll go back to them for a while. Surely they've changed. Surely they've learned." Well, they haven't learned. They haven't even recognized the evil of what's been done recently sufficiently to refute it and to give up on the ideology behind it. Therefore, there's no sense that they're taking responsibility for what's happened to date, and no sense they're taking responsibility for the future. They just want it on a plate as a received piece of gift from the West. Via Israel, for them to continue to fight their Islamist cause via this method. So, I mean, what have we really moved on since the Second Intifada with bus bombing, suicide bombings, and bus bombings in the early 2000s? I mean, this is exactly the same period we're potentially entering into, isn't it? Or have already been in throughout since, to be honest. So it's hard to see that there's any option for Israel other than to control these areas until you can get the kind of change across the period of time that Alex is talking about there. And that does have to include the things like checkpoints, because that's the only way you're going to be able to monitor the activity that's going on and the violations of such an activity, as well as setting the necessary rules and behavior that are going to make it possible for people to relinquish the kind of violence that they've been accustomed to pursuing for too long.
Yeah, so when it comes to one of my favorite companies, and I'm not sure if you'll be able to say there's it's Valve is one of my favorite companies. There are stories about when someone tries to hack their stuff or manages to hack their stuff or crack their stuff, they hire him afterwards, because if he's someone that manages to do something like that, he's someone hired. And you might be wondering why I'm saying that. Well, on Sunday, the border police said its troops of Israel, border police of Israel, said its troops shot and killed wanted terror suspect Hassan Rabaya in a village near Jenin when he attempted to escape during an arrest raid. The Palestinian security services identified Rabaya as a first lieutenant in its preventive security force, saying he was killed while performing his national duty. And so, connection to this story. Just because someone is a terrorist doesn't mean you should hire him as an anti-terrorist in this case, first lieutenant. I mean, Alex, what do you think about this specific idea that I wouldn't be surprised if he actually was working for the Palestinian Authority and at the same time was on a suspect list of Israel.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's very, yeah, I mean, it's so after Oslo, after Oslo was signed in the first couple of years, the kind of the Palestinian police force, such as it is, they would do patrols with the IDF. I think this maybe happened for about 6 months. They did patrols with the IDF, right? And I think maybe just for like the visual, right, of the whole thing, like, oh, hey, it's all over now. Look, we're out patrolling and trying to crack down on terror on our own. And we had to declare the Palestinian police force as state terrorists, basically. We had to declare them basically a terror army because they kept taking the guns and shooting, which is like, how can you have ever predicted that, right? And that should have been, I think, like, okay, this experiment has ended, right? This experiment has ended. But the lack of political will, I think, to really, declare them as terrorists, and declare them as terrorists, so therefore prevent anybody to give any money to them. That's something that I think would be very good. We could start doing that tomorrow, but the problem is, who is it that gives them their weapons? Who is it that basically funds them? Well, that's the Americans, So that starts to get very murky, yeah. And the Regavim published a report yesterday that said that I think that it was 16 PA security personnel have been killed whilst attacking, whilst trying to kill Israelis, and more than 80 were killed between 2021 and 2023, right? So I assume, taking part in acts of terrorism. So the problem is now how from a logistical standpoint, I want to, it's not even as if like they're discussing that in general. Like, how are we going to logistically try to get these guys to maybe like surrender their weapons? And because they're an army, they're now an army, so it's going to be massive amounts of destruction when it actually comes to forcing them to fall. And the reason that the Second Intifada was so brutal and was so bloody is because the Israelis really didn't know, they didn't have the ability to fight it like we do now, right? With technology, and because it's really just, you're talking about random insurgents who are able to communicate in many different ways, okay? And they're able to coordinate, right? They're able to think about, like, I mean, 2002, it might as well be like 1962 in many ways, right? In terms of like the amount of things that have happened, come out since then, that makes it really, you know, really is in Israel's favor, because it's so difficult to coordinate anything without the IDF knowing about it, right? So I mean, you get things like this that are like random acts of terrorism, but they can't really manage to coordinate anything too well, which is, yeah, I mean, it's great because it's saving so many lives. But so what is it going to take? Is it going to take like an October 7th event in Samaria, or an October 7th event in Netanya, or like a full invasion of these people? Is it going to take that before the situation is kind of upgraded and they start fighting the PA security forces? Or, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can also just stop them financially. Something has to be done. It can't just be, they must have a way to do this.
Yeah, I mean, you know, when it comes to sort of, you know, these terrorist attacks are happening in these areas, it's not just Gaza. It's not just, you know, that anything wrong is happening. Yet people are calling for the two-state solution, are calling for, well, they don't have currently enough power to actually kill all the Jews. So let's see, maybe if they have more power, they wouldn't want to kill Jews, which is basically that is the actual argument that is coming from the people who are arguing for the two-state solution. Basically, they are saying the only reason why there's violence coming from the Palestinian population is because of Israel, is because of the so-called Israeli occupation, is because Israel is in the is controlling parts of the so-called West Bank, is controlling what is going in and out of Gaza, Gaza, and once that disappears, then it won't stop happening. And again, I mean, going to you, Marco, I mean, what do you think about this idea? When I'm trying to go like in history, when did it ever happen that there was a violent like acts against some government or some organization, and when the violent party was given some state, was given some area, was given some control, then that violence stopped? I mean, well, maybe we should give Putin Ukraine and Georgia. Maybe when that happens, you know, Putin is only afraid. That's why he's attacking. You know, Palestinians are afraid. That's why they're attacking. Maybe when we give China Taiwan, also we won't have to deal with that anymore. I mean, you know, people might say, what is the connection between all this? But the idea is basically giving up, basically surrendering to violence because they are violent. I mean, Marco, any thoughts?
Well, yeah, it's been like that since the Second War, really. Again, the Second War was the only war, the last war that the West decided to fight in order to win. Since then, it's been all kind of meddling, appeasing, and trying to find diplomatic solutions and give this to this, appease with the other one. I mean, just look at, as you mentioned, Russia. Already in 2014, where Putin stole Crimea from Ukraine, it should have been subjected to the harshest possible sanction from at least all over the G7. Putin should have been forced to return it. But no, instead he was allowed to go further. And even when Biden was telling us, oh, you know, Russia is putting military resources and personnel on the border of Ukraine, still we didn't tell him to stop. China took over Hong Kong, and you know, nobody batted an eyelid. All this kind of stuff has been happening for decades, and we still look the other way. 9/11, the West was attacked, America was attacked, and what did we do? We go and bomb Saddam Hussein, who's the last guy in the queue of the responsible people. And again, October the 7th, what do we do? Oh, well, the UN comes out in favor of Hamas, in favor of the Palestinian, against Israel on a constant basis.
Yeah, and just quickly add one more thing, because it doesn't have to be even, well, one thing I'm thinking about is the Charlie Hebdo attacks. The response of the West after that was really pathetic.
And today, in fact, is the 10th anniversary of that particular attack, which left 8 journalists and 4 innocent civilians in a supermarket dead, because we allowed this ideology, Islamic ideology, to spread like the poison which it is. And I mean, after 10 years from Charlie Hebdo, how many people have lost their lives? Just in the last couple of years, how many people lost their life because we constantly refuse to name our enemies. Like the other day, China hacked the treasury in the United States, and we're still treating China like a valid economic partner. We don't say, hang on a second, this is the enemy, out of our way. No. Russia, well, we know what Russia's been doing. It's been interfering all over the world, trying to manipulate elections or disrupt stuff. So, and we still deal with them like they were a legitimate country. And the Islamic mentality, Islamic culture is still seen in the West as something valid. I'm sorry, it's utterly primitive. We cannot allow this kind of culture to take foot in the West. It's totally incompatible with our liberal principles, with freedom, with individual rights. It's a mystical view of the world which sees every single person subjected to a god. I mean, yes, not every Muslim is Islamic manic genocidal person, but insofar as you are a devout Muslim and you follow the letter of the Quran, chances are you are a genocidal murderer, a monster. So it's fine if you choose to numb your head with religion and you want to go down the route, that's fine. But up to the point where you do not interfere with somebody else's freedom to live their own life. But we seem to tolerate this kind of stuff, and we seem to ignore who the enemies are, and this kind of moral blindness that we're victim of is translated into our political behavior. And that's why Israel, too worried about the life of the Palestinians, forgets to look after its own citizens.
And the disengagement from Gaza itself was motivated by the same attitude that you were talking about there, Daniel, wasn't it? It was the idea that if they had their own power, if they could control more of their own lives, and if Israel withdrew from the territory, then the two sides could live in peace right next to each other. And of course, it didn't last any time at all, and has been what led right up to October the 7th and into where we are now. So it's never worked. And not only that, but it's countered by the attitude to how Israelis are supposed to live their lives. The fact that Alex has to carry a weapon when she's, simply going to, traveling around, going to the supermarket, etc. The fact that you have to have a safe room as part of your routine in case you suddenly have to resort to it as the sirens go off. And that is an acceptable way for people to continue to live, avoiding the issue, which is right there in front of them. I think that's what's being displayed on a sort of micro level for the Israeli people in their day-to-day lives. But at a country level, it's the same attitude, isn't it? It's the attitude that you must simply, you can only defend yourself to a certain point. And if you manage to defend yourself, or if it's only a few random little terrorist attacks here and there, well, we can live with that. That's not too bad. We can cope with each one as they crop up. We can send a few rockets back to here or there if necessary, but that's enough. We don't want to sort the problem once and for all. Now, obviously, Israel's made some really good strides in recent months towards an improvement of sorting the problem once and for all, but we're not there yet. And all of that effort can be squandered and wasted, or not capitalized upon, if it doesn't include obviously things like going for Iran, making sure the Houthis are totally unable to disrupt shipping to the benefit of every country and everybody who orders anything in the West. So all of that is essential, to solving this problem once and for all.
We have a super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says Ayn Rand needs to go. I mean, definitely we've talked about it. I've seen a report apparently that Ayn Rand says they are staying in Gaza and they are going to continue, which is weird because the New York Times article that had like comments from UNRWA itself. So I don't know what's really happening there. Also, I have no idea how they are planning to continue providing any humanitarian aid without basically technically being allowed to be there. But definitely good luck.
There are UN institutions there, so they could easily change the branding and carry on. I mean, who's going to stop them?
It's the new UNRWA. We have a super chat from PC, another super chat from PC. Thank you so much. He says it's a sad way to have to live. I mean, Alex, is it sad?
I mean, yeah. So yeah, there's yes, it is very, very sad also because we seem to treat terrorism. I mean, I believe that the defense establishment and the political establishment seem to look at terrorism and rockets and stuff like they're like forces of nature, you know? Like it's like an earthquake that we can't possibly, do anything about, right? Like it's the naturally occurring phenomenon of gunshots, right? And the naturally occurring phenomenon of rockets, right? That just appear in the sky. It's just magical. And to be honest, like the disengagement, like a little bit further on to Richard's point, the disengagement was far more immoral, I think, because at least Oslo was signed with people who were pretending to have renounced terrorism. I mean, in Gaza, it was literally just like, okay, you guys do whatever you want. You guys want to be terrorists, no problem. You're kind of, the rockets are really starting to bother us, so we're just gonna go, right? It was disengagement is a very nice, is a euphemistic way of saying, I don't know, surrender, right? And I think as well, it's they have never taken the Palestinians very seriously as a force, right? Okay, you're firing off a few mortars, no problem. We'll build an Iron Dome, right? You're building your $500 missiles with stuff that you found in the bottom of your kitchen sink, no problem. We'll intercept it with our $50,000 missiles, no problem. Oh, you want to be a terrorist? No problem. We'll just, check the phones of every single person living in Judea, no problem. Like it's always just this kind of, like we'll be able to figure it out. But you be who you were meant to be, right? You be who you want to be. We're not going to make any kind of judgment about that. You want to be a terrorist? Yeah, okay. Our kids might want to be, maybe they want to work in software, and maybe some of them want to be, whatever. And you guys want to be terrorists? No problem. It's just this complete, no expectation, right? No expectation to be on them. I mean, like all of it's just time after time, we seem to completely forget who they are or pretend we don't know. We know who the PA forces are. They're a miserable police force, right? Because they're just they're just people who are protecting the dictator. Obviously, it's just I really hope, right? It's very difficult to put the toothpaste back in the tube, right? So Oslo was toothpaste. We just really, it's very, very difficult to get it back in the tube now, right? And the disengagement from Gaza was definitely a toothpaste, right? That you just can't get back in. You cannot. I mean, now look at how much it's taken us. What, like hundreds of billions of dollars, and how many lost lives, right? I mean, that's the price of trying to take back a little bit of control, because the tools that the Palestinians have are very rudimentary, very rudimentary. They don't have anything they have they're going to use as a weapon, right? So you have it is not, and they're not like the Houthis that are very, very far away, and that you can't do a military occupation of Yemen and make sure that they capitulate, or make sure that they don't do X, Y, and Z. And so that this can be solved. This has to be solved, and it has to be solved with really properly building the Jewish communities of Judea and Samaria properly. On every hilltop, there has to be some kind of structure, a civilian structure, large cities, I hope, because the country can't survive. You can spit from the let's say a hilltop in Benjamin, and you're literally at Ben Gurion Airport. You can close down the whole of the country. From the place that shooting was today, you can see Tel Aviv with your naked eye. You can see it, okay? And so there's many things that have to be done, but it can be done. All of it can be done. Otherwise, I mean, otherwise, what's it going to be? What?
Someone in the chat is asking, my big question is what the hell IDF, since 15 months were fighting and still no end to this. Well, there are still hostages in Gaza. There are still attacks coming out of Gaza. And don't confuse sort of moral and physical ability. Israel on October 7 probably had the ability to pretty much wipe out all of Gaza absolutely completely. But it didn't. I think large part to the international response to that, and large part towards that, I think would be, and by wiping out, I mean like literally killing everyone. That I think would be a bit over excessive. But trying to look at this sort of, it sort of reminds me of how like Israel cannot do any right. Like if on one hand there's too many people that died, there's just too much death, and why is IDF still like fighting? Why is there still going on? Well, it's because they want to minimize how many Palestinians die. So yeah, the fundamental is that Israel will always be in the wrong, so there is nothing they can do.
Just one very, 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 very quick thing. Like, the West Bank is not Gaza. Okay, the West Bank, we have very good control over it. And we have very good control over the bits that we have control. But it is not Gaza. Gaza really literally was in the arms of terror. Was in the control of terrorists for 17 years. 17 years. So yes, the thing is about like Ramallah, you can impose a siege on Ramallah very, very easily. Okay, and make sure that no one comes out. You can check everybody that leaves Ramallah. This terrorist, I'm sure he's from one of the villages. I'm sure that he's from Nablus or one of those. He's from that area for sure. You can have you can check every car that comes out of there. Okay, you really can. So.
Marco, any last thoughts on the topic, and also where can people find you?
Yes, well, the enemy of civilization and life made themselves very clear, and they're very consistent. That's why they're still holding hostages in Gaza, the very place where they are supposed to be under assault by the IDF. And the IDF always every day runs operation in the West Bank against either Hamas operatives or Islamic Jihad operatives. Every day there's one of the main people that are captured. So this gives you the extent of how embedded these monsters are in the whole fabric of society in the West Bank and in Gaza. Gaza itself is effectively a big fortress. It's a Swiss cheese full of tunnels and weapons still there, although IDF has been dismantling it bit by bit. But the people, the evil monsters that are playing the victim are actually still fighting. They're not giving up. They're not giving up their hostages. And there are, about 100 people still held hostages there. So if they were really realizing, okay, we've lost, they would have surrendered by now, wouldn't they? But no, because clearly they're not in a position of A, suffering enough to give up, and B, accepting the fact that they're on the wrong. They're still fighting because they still believe that their way is the right way and our way is the wrong one. They're trying to destroy us. They're trying to destroy civilization, making sure that there isn't a state in the Middle East that can show everyone else what a free state looks like, what freedom looks like for people who are free to be productive and enjoy life. Israel cannot be allowed to exist because it's just a slap in the face of all these Hegelian Marxist, Islamo altruist, UN-funded policies. So they have to shut it down because such a thing cannot possibly exist. Otherwise, it's obvious to everyone what the right way to live is.
And these murders that took place on Route 55 were praised by Hamas as being heroic, because getting out of a vehicle and shooting randomly at a bus and passing cars and hitting whoever you hit is operating by their standard of value of death and destruction. And of course, they're hoping it's going to be Jews, but anybody near or who's associating with Jews is equally a valid target in their eyes, as opposed to the IDF, which is heroically trying to defend Israel, and with the targeted attacks on the terrorists is trying to do that in the minimum way possible, paying too much attention to the problem of collateral when overvaluing that over the problem of eliminating the terrorism once and for all. But nevertheless, that contrast there is clear for everyone to see. And in terms of where you can find some of our work, you can look at the Briefly Objective, the sister channel to this one, descriptions in the link below, where clips from the shows taken here with added visuals are made, and they're short, to the point, and really useful for you to send into your social media feeds to get the message out there so people really understand the principles, the philosophy, the thinking that is necessary to combat these worst elements in this world.
Alex, any last thoughts? And where can people find you?
Yeah, so I would also say that so there really was a true hero of the moment, and that was the civilian that managed to you heard the civilian. There was a very, a crazy video that was later uploaded of a civilian. You can hear him. He hears that they have automatic guns. He takes out his pistol, right? You can hear him pulling it back. It's a Glock or something, or maybe it's a woman, I don't know, and fires off, I think, 13 bullets. So empties the clip. That is true bravery. Okay, for a civilian to do that is really wow. And it was these brave people, these brave civilians that really managed to, otherwise the terrorists would have kept shooting. They would have shot everybody on the bus. It could have been a mass casualty event. So, I really, really hope as well that I really hope all of the other injured people make a really fast recovery. I really recommend Habitronistim, which is IDSF. Regavim has a really very interesting report that they released a few days ago, I think on the 3rd, about the Palestinian police force, such as it is. And yeah, and I recommend further more stuff on Ayn Rand Centre UK that I hope we won't have to ever cover anything like this ever again, although I'm not remaining confident.
Yeah, let's hope for the best. Just quickly to clarify, Bonnie in the chat says, and he was killed. So there were two people. There was the police officers on site that I think he really prevented this from becoming much bigger. They started escaping after that, and then while they were escaping, there is a video. I guess we don't know if it was a man or a woman, but basically they stopped by the side of the road when they saw them escaping. They got their, as you said, handgun ready and started shooting at them while they were escaping. So yeah, definitely huge respect to both of them. And but as Bonnie mentioned, the police officers that was on site was killed, is my understanding.
Off duty, I think. He was with his kids. These are the sons, so I think he was off duty, yeah.
So thank you everybody for watching today. It's a bit of a sad news, but maybe I'll just add news. It sounds like Trudeau is about to resign, or specifically will not run in the recent or the upcoming rather Canadian election. So at least some happy news. But thank you everybody for watching today. Thank you guys for joining me today, and we'll see you tomorrow with another episode of the Daily Objective and the reality show.